One thing that is not often talked about when it comes to launching a podcast is how vulnerable it can feel to put your message out to the world and for strangers to hear it across the globe. And for most of us, we say we want to create a bigger impact, but when it actually comes down to doing that, it can be a scary thing. And so today I am joined by mindset coach and fellow podcast host Karen Powell to talk about what can happen when you're able to shift your perspective so you can start creating that meaningful change in the world that you want to make with your voice. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy.
I have been wanting to do a podcast for many years. I mean, at least 3 years. You know, like I've had my own business for many years, and I went online about 5 or 6 years ago. I'm really not that great with social media, with staying consistent and all of that, Instagram and Facebook and all that. I just kind of throw things out, and I'm just not good at keeping a good marketing thing. So I thought, podcasting, number one, it's just a great way to get your voice out there and to be very specific about things you want to talk about. But also for me, it forces me to be consistent, because I know that if I'm going to, sign up for something like this where you've got to come back every week, it's just a good thing for me. It's just really good accountability for me. So that was one of the reasons, like the big reason why I picked podcasting, because it's just so rich, actually, in so many different ways, but the accountability and the consistency for me, and then to be able to produce this content and then repurpose it, it makes my social media stuff go so much easier. I just have this stuff already done. I can just throw it onto my social media and there it is. So it's probably 2 years ago, I said, okay, now I'm going to try to launch my podcast. So I don't know, probably Googled some things, probably looked in some groups that I'm in online. How are people doing their podcast? And I just started winging it, throwing stuff together. That wasn't working so well. And so then I actually hired an online business manager specifically to help me launch a podcast. It was someone who has a podcast and someone who obviously knows how to, she knows all the parts of it. She's a lovely person. I hired her, she just started giving me all the pieces, like, hey, do this, do this, do this. And I started to get so overwhelmed because I couldn't see how all the pieces fit together. She was telling me what I needed to do, do this, do this, do this. And get onto Buzzsprout. And I'm like, I don't know why, like, what is Buzzsprout? Like, what is Riverside? I didn't know what these things were. And so I was taking the steps, but I was so just confused of the overall, like, bird's eye view of, well, how does this all fit together? So I eventually just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So I kind of pulled the plug on that. And then I found you. I'm not sure. It might have been like in a business, group someplace. I'm not sure which one, but might have just seen you or seen some people talking about you probably. And I signed up for your free thing. There was a free, really great guide. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to launch my podcast just on this guide alone, so I'm going through the guide, I'm going through all the steps and I'm ticking them off. And then I'm like, you know what? It's just too easy for me to just kind of fall off, the accountability thing and everything. So if I'm really serious about this, I need all the pieces. I want the whole thing. I want to do this properly. The difference between like what I saw other programs doing and what you do is the launch part. I saw a lot of other things where people showing you how to put your podcast together, how to find all the, put all the pieces together, but nothing was showing, well, then what? But the launch is so important. And I launch programs, so I know how important the launch is. You can't just do something without this buildup and the proper way of setting it up and everything. So that was the thing I think that just tipped me over. I'm like, okay, I'm just joining Pod Launch and let's just get this thing done. So I joined. hopped onto your 90-day challenge. I'm like, okay, 90 days. I know how to do stuff in 90 days. Hopped in there and just literally started implement. So I actually set, in the 90-day challenge, you had to set a date. This is when I'm going to be launching. So I set that date, and it was a very intentional date, and it was a hard date because I've got my program launch happening actually now. So before that, I just launched my podcast, 2 months ago. I didn't want the two launches colliding. So I was like, no, it has to be, and it'll be just so ideal if it's beforehand so I can use it in my marketing. So I set that date and then watching another training, implementing. And then I was away for like a month and a half in between. So I couldn't really do anything in there. So my time frame became very crunched, but I was still so determined that I'm going to get this done. It's so funny because I thought, okay, I'll do some when we're away at Christmas. And then I heard you say on one of the inside one of the trainings, you're like, don't try to do this over your Christmas holiday. I'm like, oh, Courtney, I'm going to just try to do it over my Christmas holiday. And you were so right. It just didn't work. I didn't do it. So I came home to all of this work, and I just literally was implementing each training and then just implementing it. And there were times when I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get this done. Honestly, there's so much to do. I don't know how I'm going to get it done. But because everything was just so perfectly laid out, it literally was just taking me by the hand and guiding me down this path that I could not see what was in front of me. But I trusted it because I totally trust you, and I trust, what other people are saying about the program and everything. So I just was like, you know what? This is going to work. And then, just getting all of the additional support inside of the Facebook group was just huge. Catherine coaching me, and Daisy always, coming in whenever I would ask a question, because everything is in the program, but every once in a while you do get a little bit like, okay, but I'm a little confused. What do I do about this? I would just go to the Facebook group, ask the question, and Daisy would be there, you would be there, Catherine would be there, other people would pop in and answer. And I just was able to just keep moving along. And so I literally was just taking one step at a time, and everything that I needed was just unfolding for me right up into the launch, through the launch, and now, after the launch.
Hold on. Let me take a note. I'm going to have my assistant put that on our website. No, I'm just kidding. I love that. Karen, you just so beautifully summarized all of the reasons why I created this program in the first place. Because when I started my podcast, the only programs that existed were things that were teaching you tech, what kind of mic you needed, how to plug it in, and the logistics of a podcast. Most of these were do-it-yourself courses, and none of them offered a comprehensive approach. And so through the years, I wound up creating the program that I wish I had back when I started my podcast. And I want to acknowledge you, Karen, for recognizing the importance of a podcast launch. Most people totally skip this step. And it kind of boggles my mind because you would never spend, a year, 2 years writing a book that's been on your heart to write, that you've been dreaming of writing. You want that book to be a bestseller. So you would spend the time writing it, and you wouldn't just hit the publish button on Amazon and cross your fingers and tell nobody about it and hope that it becomes a bestseller. No, you would be doing anything and everything you could to get the word out about that book. You would have a strategic launch plan. You would likely be working with a team that would help you get the word out about the book with a marketing campaign and so on. But yet, very few people do that with their podcasts. And then they struggle to get downloads and to gain traction, much less rank. And then they wonder why their show's not growing. But the beautiful thing is, even if you have a podcast, you can always relaunch it. You can always hit that reset button on your momentum and give your show a boost whenever it needs it. And that's the beauty of this process, is that it works whether you're launching for the first time or relaunching an existing show. And Karen, I know because of some of our conversations as you were working inside the program with us, that aside from the physical obstacles you faced, like being on a time crunch and bringing all this to life over the holidays, which is, let's face it, the busiest time of the year, there were also some mental obstacles that you had to overcome too. Can you tell us more about those? And specifically what you did to overcome them?
Yeah, the mindset thing was surprising in a way to me because I'm a mindset coach. So I know about mindset, and but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to skip it. Whenever you do something new, that you've never done before, you are going to be faced with different kinds of feelings and fears inside. That's just the way it is. But it kind of hit me hard because I'm I'm an introvert. I'm a shy person by nature. And I've been running in-person workshops with small groups, and I've been doing my online programs and things with people who I build a relationship with and that I know. And so now all of a sudden I'm putting my voice out into the world, and I'm feeling a little bit like, oh, wow, like this is really getting to be real. And I can remember, being on a call with Catherine, and we were playing my music, my intro music, and I got so emotional. I was just like, what is happening? I was like teary. It's like, what is happening? And she was just like, you know what, this means a lot to you. And it does. It means a lot to me to do this. And I want to do it right. And I want to do it well. And so I did have to move through this mindset piece of it, which, you help us through on the calls. And I remember, talking about it on the calls and feeling that support of, am I the only one who feels like very exposed by putting my voice out into the world in this new way that I haven't done before? It was really reassuring to hear that, no, this is part of it. And so that was a piece that I had to just, move through. And I did.
You did. And it was a beautiful thing to watch because you stepped fully into this new version of yourself. You started thinking like a top 100 podcast host even before you launched your podcast, which that shift right there mentally more than anything else is what had such an amazing impact on your launch results. So take us through launch day itself. I want you to walk us through as if we were reliving this with you right now. What was it like for you to finally be able to bring your podcast to life?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the launch totally surprised me. I mean, I was going for a successful launch, obviously, but I wasn't prepared for what happened. So we ended up ranking in the top 100 in at least a dozen countries. And in the United States, we were at 161. And then in Namibia, where I live now, I ranked number 1, not only in my category. So my category is education, and then the subcategory is self-improvement. So I ranked number 1 in both of those categories. And I ranked number 1 in all categories of all podcasts in Namibia. And it was so funny because during the launch, a friend of mine sent me a screenshot. She sent this to me, and there's Joel Osteen underneath me and Mark, what's his name, that the subtle art of not giving an F guy, and Jay Shetty underneath me. And she's like, Karen, you're ranking number 1. I'm like, what? Because I was so busy in the launch. I wasn't actually looking at, stats or anything. And I certainly wasn't expecting this. She's like, nope, you're ranking number 1. I checked, on other phones, my husband's phone, my sister's phone, and we're looking at this. And it was just so exciting. It was just so amazing to see, earlier I saw, I was on a call with Catherine, and she was like, she showed me also like the snapshot of the ranking, and there I was above Marie Forleo. I'm like, wait, what is happening? Like, what is actually happening? So it was really, really exciting. And I held that ranking. I held the number 1 ranking for, I think, at least 2 weeks, which was amazing. And I'm fluctuating a little bit here and there, but I'm still in like the top 50. So, things are just, it's gone really, really well.
That is just incredible. It has been so cool to watch your journey. I'd love to hear what kind of impact this is having for you in your business now. Like, what have you noticed as a result of actually launching this podcast?
It's been amazing. I mean, I've had so much feedback. I continue to get feedback nearly every day. I'm getting messages from people just telling me they'll either just send me a text or a WhatsApp or an email, just saying, thank you so much for doing this for us. They're thanking me. I'm thanking them for listening, but they're thanking me for putting the content out there. They said, it's just so great to have your voice in my ear once a week. A lot of people have been working with me, and new people who have just found me. They just are giving me this amazing feedback. A lot of people have said this is my favorite podcast. I mean, to hear that is just, it feels really good, because you create this content, you have an intention, you have a mission, I have a purpose, I have the impact that I want to make. I have the idea of that, but you never know how that's going to land with people. And so it's always really nice to get feedback, from them. So I continue, and I'm saving all of it. I save it and I look at it. I'm like, cause there are days when it's hard, I'm sure it's not easy to keep a podcast going. Every week, you're doing content. It's fun. It's a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. It actually is really fun. I'm enjoying it, but it's a lot of work as well. And so it just feels good that there's a payoff, that people are like, what, this is really great. I love it. Oh, it's one woman sent me a message. Wednesdays are officially my favorite day of the week, just because she gets to listen to the podcast on the way to work. That just makes me feel so good. So yeah, so that's, so that's one thing, is just knowing that people are getting value from it and they're resonating with it. And then the other thing with my business, I just feel so much more prepared for my launch now. Like my program launch is coming up, and I kind of feel like held in, I don't know how to explain it. I feel very held in support of my launch, just because I've got the podcast sitting there. It's like, feels like it's just like the supportive partner for me in my launch. And so it just, that just feels great. And then I also have people just signing up for my Evergreen course. And I know it's coming from the podcast, directly from the podcast. I've already made money on, just having the podcast. So that is also nice to know that it's just sitting there all the time, 24/7. 365. And, just knowing that it's sitting there. And if somebody, resonates and they're like, I want more of this and I want to join a program, and they can just do it at any time. So it's really nice.
You truly are creating an impact on multiple levels, not just with your voice, not just with your message, but also by being able to monetize your podcast so early in the game, which as online business owners is, by the way, the most profitable way for us to monetize our shows. And the beauty is, unlike traditional monetization methods with sponsors and advertisers who are looking for volume, they're looking for numbers. You don't have to wait until you have thousands of downloads to monetize your show when you're an online business owner. You can do it from day one with your own courses, your own services, your own programs. And it is hands down the most profitable way to monetize. So Karen, I'm curious, what would you say, now that all is said and done, that your biggest personal takeaway has been from this whole experience?
Oh gosh, don't try to do things alone. I think that, when I do value support, but sometimes I think, I can just do it. Let me just like roll my sleeves up and do it. And I think my biggest takeaway was, there is so much support out there. Just plug into that support. And also I remember, saying in my debrief, in our group, that one of the things that really surprised me is, I know I can do hard things. I've done hard things before. This particular one, creating a podcast, launching a podcast, seemed like a particularly big beast to me. And so it felt like a really hard thing to do. It wasn't just a hard thing. It was like a really hard thing. And so I feel really proud of myself that I was able to do it. Courtney, I never would have been able to do it without you. So I really want to give you credit for that. I really do want to sing the praises of your program, because it literally picked me up, held me, took me by the hand, and guided me down a path that showed me exactly step by step what to do. And I just couldn't have done that by myself. There's just no way. So thank you. I want to just thank you for that.
Well, thank you, because you are the walking example of trusting the process. And if you're listening right now and you're like, holy cow, I want your help to launch my podcast, just head to podlaunch.info or click the link in the show notes and let's hop on a call. Let's have a conversation. Let's find out if we're a fit to work together. I've also linked up Karen's show in the show notes for you, so be sure to check that out. And in the next episode, we're going to be talking about 3 surprising signs your podcast is plateaued. This is going to be especially relevant for you if you have an existing podcast that you're trying to grow. So don't go anywhere. That's all coming up next to help you make your business binge-worthy.